Welcome to our deep dive, you guys. Today's all about habits. Like those small things we do that really shape our lives.
Yeah, in ways we don't always realize.
Exactly. And we're going deep on this one with Atomic Habits by James Clear.
A classic,
Oh yeah, I think a lot of our listeners are probably familiar.
for sure.
But one of the most interesting ideas I found was how like those overnight success stories,
Right.
they're rarely overnight at all.
Yeah, it's like an iceberg.
Huh.
You only see the tip.
Hmm?
But there's this massive structure of work and effort that's hidden beneath the surface.
Yeah, totally. I never thought of it like that.
And Clear actually calls this period the plateau of latent potential. So you might be putting in a ton of effort, but not seeing the big results yet.
So it's like that time when you're boiling water and it seems like forever
Right.
before it actually starts bubbling.
Exactly. Like you're applying the heat, but it seems like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, boom, the whole thing boils over.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it. So like that athlete who just explodes onto the scene with a gold medal.
Probably been training for years.
Yeah.
Honing those skills during that plateau of latent potential, we just don't see it.
Right. Or that musician who releases a hit song like out of nowhere.
Hmm. Chances are they've been writing and performing for years, building up to that moment.
Okay, so much for overnight success.
Right.
It makes me feel a bit better, actually, because you start to get discouraged when you don't see results right away.
For sure.
But maybe we're just building up that potential energy, waiting for the right time.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do we actually make those small, consistent actions stick? Because we've all been there. You start a new habit with like the best intentions, and then poof, a few weeks later, you're back to your old ways.
So Clear says our habits are super tied to our identity. Like it's not just about doing something. It's about becoming the kind of person who does that thing.
So every time we make a choice,
You're kind of casting a vote for the type of person you want to be.
hold on, that's really interesting. So it's like each healthy meal I eat is a vote for healthy person.
Exactly.
And each time I hit snooze, I'm voting for, well, definitely not morning person.
Got it. And the more votes you cast for certain identity, the stronger that belief becomes. It's pretty cool.
So it's a way to like reframe how we think about changing our habits.
Exactly.
This is already making me see my own habits in a new light. But how do we actually go about building better habits? I'm ready to cast some votes for like productive me.
Well, Clear gives us this great framework, the habit loop.
Okay.
It's a cycle with 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and then reward. So basically, the cue triggers a craving, which leads to a response, and then you get a reward that makes you want to do it all again.
Okay, so let's break that down. Let's say the cue is me walking past my favorite bakery on my way home.
All right, so that visual cue of seeing the bakery, it triggers a craving, right?
That desire for a delicious pastry.
Yep, and the response is you walking into the bakery and buying a treat,
And then the reward is that warm, sugary goodness.
which makes you want to repeat the cycle next time you walk by.
Every single time. Okay,
Yeah.
so by understanding this loop, we can kind of manipulate it to our advantage.
Yeah, like we can make good habits more appealing and easier to start and more satisfying to actually do.
That makes sense. But what about those habits we want to break? How do we break the loop when it's working against us?
Well, one way is to disrupt the cue. So in your bakery example, if seeing it triggers the craving, maybe you take a different route home.
Avoid it altogether.
Exactly. Or you could try changing your response. So instead of buying the pastry, maybe call a friend to catch up.
So it's not about willpower. It's like we're changing the game entirely.
Yeah, you're recognizing the patterns and then making choices that help you reach your goals, even when your brain is like, give me that sugar.
This is starting to feel less like self-improvement and more like a heist movie, where we're outsmarting our own bad habits.
I like that.
Okay, so we've talked about cues and cravings. But how do we make good habits more attractive in the first place? Because let's be honest, some habits like flossing are just not that exciting.
Right. So this is where Clear's second law of behavior change comes in. Make it attractive. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, right?
Makes sense.
So to make a good habit more appealing, you can try pairing it with something you actually enjoy. Clear calls this temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. That sounds kind of sneaky.
It is a little bit. What if you only let yourself watch your favorite TV show while working out?
Oh, so you're making me choose.
In a way, yeah. Or listen to an awesome podcast while doing chores.
Okay, I see what you mean. But what if I don't have a TV show or podcast that can compete with, say, my social media addiction?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Another strategy is to join a culture where the behavior you want is already the norm.
So like if I want to become a runner, I should hang out with runners.
Exactly. Surround yourself with people who make it look fun and achievable.
It's like changing your environment to change your perception.
Right? Think about professional athletes. Their training is grueling, but they love it because it's their world.
That's so true. Okay, so we've made the habit attractive, we found our crew, but even on best days, those good habits can feel impossible. Like life gets in the way, motivation disappears. How do we make those habits easier to stick to?
This is Clear's third law. Make it easy. It's all about reducing friction as much as possible.
So make it easy peasy.
Right. You want the good habit to be the path of least resistance. So if you want to work out in the morning, lay your clothes out the night before. If you want to eat healthy, pre-chop your veggies for snacks.
So smart. It's like removing all the excuses before they even pop up. But some habits just feel so daunting, even with the prep work done. Like, I'm not the only one who gets overwhelmed at the thought of tackling a huge project.
Oh yeah, we've all been there. That's where the 2-minute rule can really help.
2-minute rule.
You break down any new habit into a 2-minute version. So instead of write a chapter, it's write for 2 minutes. Instead of clean the whole house, it's clean one counter for 2 minutes.
I love that because sometimes just getting started is the hardest part.
Totally. And this makes it feel way more manageable.
It's like tricking yourself into being productive. I am loving this. I'm thinking about my own habits in a whole new way. Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to talk about something that I think is so crucial, making habits satisfying. Because who wants to keep doing something if it doesn't feel good?
That is a great point, and it brings us to Clear's fourth law. Make it satisfying.
Okay.
It's all about creating that positive reinforcement, especially since the benefits of a good habit can take a while to show up. Like you're not going to see a six-pack after 1 week of working out.
Yeah, sadly not.
So we need to find ways to make the process itself rewarding. And one of the best ways to do that is habit tracking.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Isn't that where you use like an app or a calendar to mark off the days you do the habit?
That's one way, yeah.
Yeah.
It can be really motivating to see those streaks building up. It's like visual proof that you're making progress, and it reinforces that identity of someone who follows through.
And it makes it kind of like a game. And who doesn't love to win? But before we get too caught up in winning, let's take a pause here.
Welcome back to our deep dive into atomic habits. Last time we really dug into the habit loop and how to make those good habits more appealing. But what happens when that, initial excitement wears off?
You're speaking my language because we've all been there, you know. You start strong with this new habit, and then a few weeks later, you're right back to your old ways. How do we make those habits stick, even when our motivation dips?
Well, Clear talks about the long game of habits, like realizing that real change takes time. And it's those small, consistent actions that add up over time.
So it's less about sprinting and more like a marathon.
Yeah, exactly. And this reminds me of a story Clear tells about Pat Riley, the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. He created that career best effort program, right?
Exactly. So Riley was super focused on tracking even the tiniest improvements in his players' performance, like things that most people wouldn't even notice.
So like what kind of things?
Well, if a player normally makes 8 out of 10 free throws, but in practice they hit 9 out of 10, that was considered a career best effort, a CBE.
So they're celebrating those tiny victories instead of only focusing on the big achievement.
Exactly. And they were encouraged to aim for at least 1 CBE every single day, no matter how small it seemed.
And I bet that really shifted their perspective.
It did. And guess what? This little shift in focus helped them win multiple NBA championships.
Wow, so those tiny improvements really can lead to big results.
You really can.
But how do we apply that to our own lives, you know?
Okay, so think about a habit you're trying to build, like, let's say, writing more consistently. Instead of trying to write a whole novel, what if you just tracked your daily word count?
Okay.
And celebrate each time you beat your previous best.
So you're building momentum with those small wins.
Yeah, you start to believe that you can actually achieve your goal.
I like that it's like reframing success as a bunch of small steps instead of one giant leap. But there's more to it, right? It's not just about what we do, it's also about who we believe we are.
Absolutely. Clear says our identity is always changing, and our habits reflect who we think we are.
So if I've always struggled with procrastination, it's not like I'm stuck being a procrastinator forever.
Not at all. You can choose to become someone who takes action and gets things done. It starts with changing how you see yourself, visualizing yourself as that person.
And then proving it to yourself with those small wins.
Exactly.
This is really cool. It's like we can choose who we want to be, But with all these potential habits, how do we know which ones to focus on? How do we find the ones that will really work for us?
Well, Clear talks about finding your groove. He says to think about your personality and how it might affect your habits. Like some people are naturally more disciplined, while others are more creative and spontaneous.
So it's like matching your habits to your personality.
Exactly. He uses this idea called the explore-exploit trade-off. So at first it's important to explore, try new things and see what sticks.
It's like trying on different hats until you find one that fits.
Exactly. But once you find a few habits that you like and that match your personality, then you switch to exploit mode.
Okay, so you focus your energy on those habits and make them part of your life.
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot where your skills and what you enjoy meet the things that really matter to you.
It's like turning your life into a game you actually want to play. But even with the perfect game plan, we're going to mess up sometimes, right? How do we deal with those setbacks and stay on track for those long-term goals?
Well, it's important to remember that setbacks are completely normal. Everyone experiences them. It's not about being perfect, it's about being resilient. Clear actually says missing once is an accident. Missing twice at the start of a new habit.
So it's about bouncing back from those mistakes.
Yeah, if you slip up, don't beat yourself up about it. Just learn from it and get back on track.
That's a good way to look at it. And it also makes me think about setting up systems to help us avoid those slip-ups in the first place.
Right. Clear talks about automating your habits as much as possible, like setting up automatic bill pay or using a meal delivery service to eat healthier.
So it's like making those good choices the easy choices.
Exactly. And we can use technology to help us too. Like using apps to track our progress, set reminders, or even block distracting websites.
It's like using tech to help us instead of hurt us. This whole deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I have all these new tools to make some real changes. Welcome back to our deep dive. I'm really feeling inspired to tackle my own habits after all this. We've talked about so much, like the habit loop and, finding those habits that really work for us. But there's one thing that keeps coming up for me. Our mindset.
Yeah, it's wild how much our thoughts can affect what we actually do.
Yeah.
Clear talks a lot about reframing our habits, especially the
Wow.
ones that are hard. It's like changing our thinking from I have to I get to.
I love that. Like instead of seeing exercise as this chore,
Right.
it's a celebration of what our bodies can do.
Exactly. Instead of, I have to go to the gym, it's I get to move my body and feel strong.
Yeah, or if you're trying to meditate instead of I have to sit still, it's I get to create some peace in my day.
That's the idea.
It's like choosing to focus on the good stuff, the rewards instead of how hard it might seem.
And finding your why can be a big motivator too. Like, why are you doing this habit in the first place? What's the deeper reason?
So if I'm trying to save money, my why might be to be more financially secure.
Exactly. Or if you're learning a new language, your why might be to connect with people from different cultures.
It's like having a guiding star,
Hmm.
something to keep you going when you want to give up. But let's be honest, life happens, things come up. How do we deal with those challenges and setbacks that we all face?
Well, one of the most important things is to remember that setbacks are normal. They're going to happen. It's not about being perfect. It's about being resilient. Clear has this great line, missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit.
So if we mess up, it's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The key is to not let it define you.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it, learn from it, and just get back on track.
It's like learning to ride a bike. You're going to fall a few times, but you got to get back up and keep trying.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And, it also makes me think about building systems that make it harder to mess up in the first place.
So like setting ourselves up for success.
Exactly. Clear talks about automating your habits as much as possible, like setting up automatic bill pay or using a meal delivery service to help you eat healthier.
So we're making it easier to make those good choices.
Right. And we can use technology to help us too, like using apps to track our progress or even block distracting websites.
Using those tools to work for us, not against us.
Exactly.
This has been such an amazing deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how habits work. What's the biggest takeaway for you?
For me, it's that we really do have the power to change our lives, one small habit at a time. Those little actions can lead to big changes if we're consistent. It's like we're in charge of our own destinies.
That's such a powerful message. It's about choosing the habits that will help us create the lives we want and become the best versions of ourselves. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into atomic habits. We hope you've been inspired to make some positive changes in your own life. Welcome to our